Goldblatt, Jessica Sukhodolsky, and Jessica Weiss, who are on us with the panel. And thank you so much for agreeing. I know also the people who weren't able to, they had a lot of good reasons, and it's could be scary, but I'm really, really happy that you guys are going to be with us with this panel that I'm very excited for. So what we're going to be doing is, first, I'm going to have a few words of introduction and an inspirational story that I want to share as part of talking about how to take Purim into the year with us, about happiness. And then we'll have our panel. And in the end, I want to add a few more things in the end also to summarize and to sort of close everything. And maybe we'll have time for other people to also add their thoughts and lessons. I'm hoping that we can learn from each other tonight. So first, I would like to dedicate this evening in memory of Meir and Rachel Birati, my husband's Yisrael's grandparents, who we lost both of them recently. And in all the Shiva and funerals, it was they one after the other. It kept on coming up how positive they were, how much of a really, really happy people they were. And it was really amazing. And they were married for 64 years in a very loving relationship. But one of the things that kept on coming up is how, and their tip for happiness was really to see the good in other people. And they were really, one of the things they always said good things about others. And so this evening should be in their memory. So that's introduction. I feel like I spent my time also like all these different introductions. But I think it's really important in evening and happiness to give two disclaimers that are really, really important. And one of them is that when we talk about happiness, I feel like it puts this expectation. I know it's definitely when I spoke to people about it, well, I'm not always happy, or, I should be happy. We talked about before, I should be happy, I'm not happy. And so I think we have to understand that it's not possible. I don't think it's even healthy to be happy all the time. I think that happiness is a good emotion, but it's not always the appropriate emotion. There's times in our lives, if we're talking about this year,
you're muted.
You need to unmute, sorry.
Oh yeah, I unmuted. Okay, fine, yeah, no problem. So as I was saying, it's not always healthy to be happy. Sometimes we need to be sad, sometimes we need to be angry, sometimes we need to be scared. I mean, those are the normal emotions that we have. And more than that, I think that when we think of happiness, isn't only, being like, or I'm reading a lot of Rabbi Karlebach, we don't need a lot of clowns in the world. Happiness it could be a lot of different definitions. This could be a happy in my life, but there's also happy with my life. And sometimes happy with my life is feeling other feelings. And so I would say that happiness is really also the ability to move between emotions, to feel our different emotions and not get stuck in one emotion, to be able to move through the different emotions and choose our emotions at the appropriate time. So, and I think one of the nice ideas about that, that a lot of my inspiration about happiness comes from Yemima Mizrahi, who I've been listening to her classes for many, many years. I even brought with me a little cute book that she has about happiness. I don't know if they translated this one. But she says, Rabbi Nachman says, mitzvah gedola liot b'simcha tamid. It's, we always translate, it's a mitzvah to be happy all the time. And she says, it doesn't say sameach, smecha all the time, to be happy, like happy all the time, but to be in the subject of happiness. Happiness is one of the things that we want to, that it's important to be striving for, to be thinking about, not always expecting that we'll be happy. And especially as women, but all humans, but I think also definitely we have these ups and the downs, and that's very normal. So when we come together and talk about happiness, I think, we want to learn from each other how to be happy more of the time without an expectation that anyone has a secret to be happy all the time. And the second disclaimer is very simple, that there are times that people really have a trouble being happy, and some tip or some idea that we're going to share won't help them in that situation. And those are situations that come up and people get help for them, and there's professional help. And that's it, we should make that as non-stigmatic as possible, because there's real situations. So those are my two disclaimers that are really important to me. But going on from that, I think that, we've had this year of COVID, and I think even this event being pushed off till after Purim even more brings home to me the fact that that it's been a year. It's been a year. And these are the days where I think about it. It's been a year. And we coming up to Purim, it's been a year that's been harder to be happy for a lot of reasons. But it was really important for me to do this evening about happiness, because even though it's been an unprecedented year, or if you say that word, being happy in challenging times is not unprecedented, whatever. It's been before. There's been so many times and so many inspiring, and just in the research I've done, I went back to so many people who I'd heard their stories over the years about how they were able to be happy in challenging times. And so I think it's really important, especially now and as a year, we know that this reality is ongoing and it's not going to disappear overnight. It's so important for ourselves to think how we can support our happiness, our mental health in this year. So with that, I'm going to talk for just a few more minutes about what can we learn from Purim about happiness to take within the year. So when I thought about it, different ways to talk about it, I think that happiness is an emotion, and there's different ports of entry, what can influence our emotions. And there's actions and thoughts that both of them really can, from either direction, affect our happiness. So right now, I just want to focus on a story that I read from Rav Carlebach that really, really inspired me, and I want to share it with all of you. So the story goes like this. So it's Purim morning, and the Maggid of Kuznets is in his shul, and all his Hasidim are coming to give him Shalach Manot. I'm really sorry. I read this story in Hebrew. I know you told it originally in English, but the terminology is going to be in Hebrew because I just can't tell it otherwise. Anyway, so all the Hasidim are coming to give Mishlach Manot to the Rebbe, and this Pinchas, a poor man comes to the Rebbe and he says to him, "Good Purim, Rebbe." And the Rebbe says to him, "Pinchas, I love you so much. Purim Sameach, where's your Mishloach Manot?" And he said, "What do you mean, where's my Mishloach Manot? I'm so poor, I have nothing to eat. I couldn't bring you." He said, the Rebbe says, "Pinchas, you're one of the most important things. I need you to bring me a Mishloach Manot. But first, let me teach you how to say good Purim, how to say Purim Sameach." So the Rebbe says, "Purim Sameach," and the Chassid says back, "Purim Sameach." And no, that's not how we do it. No, stand straight and smile and say Purim Sameach. And he says Purim Sameach, and it takes a few times until Pinchas is really caught onto it. And he goes around, he's saying Purim Sameach, Purim Sameach. He's really excited, and he goes out to the street, and he's so happy. He now feels like he has this new power. He goes and saying to everyone on the street, Purim Sameach, Purim Sameach. And everybody's, saying back to him, Purim Sameach. And he walks into the grocery store and he says, "Purim Sameach, shopkeeper, I love you so much. And I know that I owe you money for 10 years, but I need a good bottle of wine and a cake for the Rebbe." And shopkeeper was sort of shocked. He doesn't know Pinchas like that. He said, "No problem. Here, take it. Just take wine and a cake, bring it to the Rebbe." He said, "Thank you, shopkeeper. I'll pay you back another time." And he goes back to the Rebbe and gives him the Mishloach Manot. And the Rebbe is very happy with his gift. But then Pinchas goes back out to the street, and he thinks for a second. He says, "Wait, I can't go home on Purim without anything. There's nothing in my house to eat. What are they going to do?" So he goes back to the shopkeeper and he says, "Purim Sameach, shopkeeper, I love you so much. Can you please give me some food for my family for Purim?" And the shopkeeper just gives him, "Take whatever you need, Pinchas, no problem. It's Purim." So Pinchas goes and he goes into his house and he says, "Purim Sameach, family, Purim Sameach, my dear wife, Purim Sameach, children." And the children and everyone they look at him shocked. I mean, his wife she's used to him not doing anything. And usually everybody, his wife has comments, "You don't do anything. You are no good. You don't give us food." and the children are, what's his father? He doesn't do things, but they're all like, before he can say anything, he cooks them a whole meal. He says, no, it's Purim today. We need to sit down. We need to eat and have a good meal together. And so he gets the table set and he sits there and he teaches them about the Megillah. And then he teaches his children, Purim Sameach. He says to them, and they're sitting at the table and they're all saying Purim Sameach, and they're all excited. And the Rebbe in the middle of his Suda stops and he says, everyone be quiet. We need to listen to Pinchas, who's saying Purim Sameach in his house. And also in Shemayim, they're listening to his story. But that's not the end of the story. The next day, Pinchas walks in to the richest man in the town. He says to him, dear man, yesterday I received the blessing of Purim Sameach from the Rebbe, and I know that I can do good things. Can you please give me a loan of 10,000 ruble? I will pay you back in a few months. And the man agreed. And within a few months, this man became very, very rich. And according to Rav Shlomo Carlebach, he actually was able to support like 3 different Hasidic courts during the next years and prevent some sort of pogrom that was planned against the Jews. And this was all because of this Purim Sameach. So when we think about this story, I want to finish up very soon. I think about 2 different sides of it, about how our actions can support happiness. I think the first one is from the side of the Chassid. The Chassid, right, when he started, he didn't believe that this Purim Sameach was going to have any effect. But he went with it. He went and he said it and he over and over again. And the emotions and the standing, and even as I'm telling the story, can feel a change in the voice and the way you feel. And there's so much power to what we do, to our actions, that even if we're not feeling it, it really does have an effect on us. And I think that Purim is full of that. Purim is full of the songs, of the words we use, the clothes, the costumes, the whole atmosphere. And I think for me, one of those points that brought it home was so much that, like, when I would have a hard day and I would think, I'll listen to some soulful music and will make me feel better. All of a sudden it would come Adar and I would say, no, well, let's listen to Purim music. And it just changes your whole mood, the music that you listen to. Or another thing, I've mentioned different things, but I learned a bit of CBT, and my teacher would always say, if you see someone who has a borderline depression, tell them to go shopping. I tell them, go out and buy some clothes, and that's something that helps us change. And also exercise. So all those things, are actions, can really change. On the other side of it is from the Rebbe's point of view that we can take from Purim, that the Rebbe had a ton of people giving Mishloach Manot. I don't think he needed the Mishloach Manot, but he gave Pinchas the feeling that he was important. He gave Pinchas the feeling that he needed him and that he was an important person. And we talk a lot, and he did that by giving him a tool, something that he could use. And so I think, when we talk about happiness, we talk about giving to others, and it's also giving to others, but it's also letting other people be meaningful and finding them a way to be important, and let them give to us. And definitely the mitzvah of Purim, the Mishloach Manot, the Matanot Evyonim, are really about connection, about the social part. And I think that anywhere you look in research that has been done, relationships are so much important for happiness, and therefore it's so important to find those ways to connect. So those are my thoughts about the action side of how we can take Purim with us to the year. And at this point, I'd like to introduce our panel, which I'm really, really excited about. And I think that, again, it's beautiful to bring different people together and hear their perspectives, and hearing other people, and a lot of different people, how each one has found happiness as much as they had. So we have, let's see, we're going to try to add spotlights on our okay. Is that good? I think we have it. Good. So great. I'm so excited about our panel. So there's 3 questions for the panel, and we're going to go, we'll go one by one through the questions, and we'll see how we start. And if you guys want to change the order of how we answer the questions, that would be fine. So in general, the first question is, how has this past year challenged your happiness? Because first of all, my assumption, and we're going into this, that we're talking about this because it hasn't been the easiest year, and because a lot of different things that we've done before have been changed. So Mrs. Radinsky, do you want to start?
Sure. And Yishar Kochech. So actually, it's very interesting because this all started exactly a year ago for all of us. And exactly 1 year ago, this past Shabbos, my husband and I went to New York. We went for a sitter party for one of our grandchildren. And at the same time, and we were at SAR. We have several grandchildren at SAR. And SAR went into the news very quickly. So we went to a sitter party and we read to grandchildren. So we were at SAR on Thursday a year ago. For several hours that Thursday morning. And we spent a wonderful Shabbos with our kids in New York. And we came home on Monday, and there were people wearing masks, and there were people around us who were coughing and sneezing. And I don't think I even knew the word, but I said to my husband, oh no, what's going on? Anyway, we came home and we're like happy, you know, we've just seen the kids and we're so excited. And then the next morning, Tova called me and she said, my son-in-law, David, was driving and he heard on the news that this news had just come out the next morning about SAR, those of you familiar with it, the day school in New York, and that New Rochelle in New York was also this bed of illness. Well, that's exactly where my kids live, and these people that they were talking about were their neighbors. So in a skinny minute, my happiness was literally challenged because I went from being on this high of being with the kids and being at a Chumash party and being so excited with the grandchildren, et cetera, et cetera. And then bam. So very quickly, I called the doctor, and the doctor immediately, I had no details. All I knew was what I heard on the news. And the doctor at that moment said that we needed to quarantine. It changed very quickly as the day progressed. But I think for me, the point was that our health was challenged immediately. The health of my husband and me, of the family, of everybody we knew, like in 1 second, you know, we didn't even know what the effects were going to be. Our family, it was like, okay, what's happening now with our family? Tova lives around the corner. After a week, that week was the last Shabbos that we actually spent eating a meal inside together. Though this past Shabbos, we did it for the first time in a year again. So there was family that was challenged, there was health, there were social relationships, shul. The last time we went to shul, well, we went this year, Baruch Hashem, on Thursday night, but we hadn't been there for a year. And my husband is a shul goer every single day, twice a day. And I go to shul on Shabbos. So, you know, the idea of relationships, independence was challenged. So all those are parts of things that are part of my personal happiness. Yeah. So those are some of the challenges that I faced, and I will move on to the next person.
Wow, that's so many levels. Wow. Yeah. Chana, Dina?
Hi, and yes, thank you. I think this year has been very challenging for different reasons for different people. There's obviously, you know, to Mrs. Radinsky's point, what I love, what did you say, skinny minute? I have to remember that, I love that. Our world changed completely and very swiftly. And I think that was the jarring thing that most of us remember. We went from 0 to 60. And it wasn't just 0 to 60, our lives changed. It was our loved ones, some of them were very sick. Some of them were at extreme risk. It was like, we could put as many safety protocols into place, but the end result was, did it matter? Did it matter what we did? Like, we could try as much as we can, but this one's still sick and that one's still sick. But that was just, for me, that was just the COVID part. And it was, for me, I think the hardest piece was the measure of control that we hold over our life was just obliterated. And someone like me, who I really value order and control, not being able to bring any measure of sense or order to anything was very challenging. And I think the fact that our regular routines, you know, the places that we found our me time, the people that we vented to, like all the things that we did for our own personal integral mental health, those things were just flipped upside down. And I think the things that we had relied upon for structure, for balance, were gone. And we had to kind of rebuild that in our own way. And I think the last thing that really bothers me, it still bothers me tremendously, is how changed our view of others is. I think in the early days of the pandemic, we were all feeling like we're in this together, we can do this, like let's share our schedules and all those things. But I don't think we feel that way anymore. I think if anything, we're more judgmental, we're more critical, we're more everything, we're less understanding. And the result of having a disease that's transmitted by others is that you have to trust others, you have to trust other people, and we don't. And I think that that's one of the biggest challenges to our happiness. And I worry that we're not going to get that piece back, the trust, the feeling of oneness with other people. And I think that that's, for me, it's definitely been a challenge to my happiness, but it's one of the worries that I have going forward is how are we going to make our worlds happy, like together again? Mm-hmm. And I think that's just, for me, those were my struggles and my view. And now I'm turning it over to the next one. I can say, Jessica, you're up, because you're both Jessica.
Yeah. Jessica, you go. Yeah.
Okay, so like Mrs. Radinsky, my biggest challenge really came at the very beginning of the pandemic. I had been doing fertility treatments for several months and was scheduled to do an IVF transfer on March 19th, 2020. And we started hearing that everything was shutting down, and the hospitals were like going crazy, and that they were going to, that elective procedures were going to be pushed off until further notice. So obviously we're really heartbroken and super anxious that we might have to start everything all over again after we'd been through so much. However, I feel like Hashem intervened, and we found out we were still able to do the procedure. And afterward, we found out that it was the very last elective procedure at Baptist before they shut them down for a few months. So Hashem was definitely watching out for us, and we were very lucky in that respect. So, but for about a week when all of this started, it was very, very challenging and like a major panic for us.
Wow. That's really scary. I think it's we'll hear Jessica in a second, but I think it was just so much fear, and also just the trauma. I think of the whole thing was pretty, I think, Chana, Dina, you're saying about coming back, it's like, it's after a trauma, we're trying to what's the new normal? It's really, wow. Jessica Weiss.
Okay, well, first to Jessica, I'm so happy and thrilled for you that you could do the procedure, because now Talia is here and she's just wonderful. So truthfully, 100%, I did not find it as challenging in the beginning. I work from home, so there was no change for me. It was nice having the boys home. They would stop by my office and just sit and stare at me throughout the day. When they had a 5-minute, a 3-minute break in class, they would come and talk to me. So I enjoyed it. I liked having them around. I liked having the extra conversation. I liked the fact that they just wanted to come by, and for whatever reason, my boys say I love you to me, to Dan, to each other several times throughout the day. I find it to be extremely bizarre, but they do that. So just having them walk through the room and say, hey, Mom, I love you, or hey, Ema, I love you, whatever. It was nice. I didn't feel like there was a lot of trouble issues until the summer, when my boys wanted to start doing things when school was out. And the fact is, I have several autoimmune diseases, and my boys are extra careful. And everyone at the high school will tell you, especially with Nadav, he is extra super careful. If he sees someone without a mask, he'll walk far away. He would not let me go to the grocery store. Dan said, wear a mask, you'll be fine. Nadav said, no, I'll go for you. So it was challenging, I think, a lot at the beginning of the summer when the boys wanted to go out and do things. and realized that, like the same thing with Chana, Dina was saying with trust, we didn't trust what other people were doing. And there wasn't anyone in particular, and it wasn't that somebody was outwardly showing that they were doing something wrong, but who knows if they passed someone at the gas station that walked too close to them. I mean, there were so many little things that could go wrong. So luckily, hope, it's getting better.
Yeah, right. Hopefully. No, definitely the anxiety, I think, and the not knowing. I keep on saying also now, it's just the, not knowing how easy or hard it will be to get, and it's very scary. So in this situation, I think everyone here in the different space really had the challenges to the happiness. So we want to ask for our second question, what were your strategies and activities that you've done over this year that have helped you, that have increased your happiness? So we want to do the same order, or let's do a different order? Same order, Mrs. Radinsky?
Sure. Okay, so for, part of what happened at the very beginning was that I realized that, okay, plan A, the control, what we think we're going to do is not working. So let's go to plan B. So there are several things that I would suggest are coping mechanisms, and I think work just in general to make life better and easier if one can do it. An attitude of gratitude is something that I think that gratitude is really a secret to happiness. Positive thinking is very important. One of the things that I always had a dream of was that one day my husband and I would go to Israel for several months, and I'd just be able to go to classes all day. Well, in this new life of staycation, I say that I'm in my own little kollel, because I have different classes every single day with different people. And I mean, it could be sometime, you have to realize I don't have little children at home or little grandchildren. So I have a lot of time. So I can do this at this stage in my life. So I can do classes, I could listen to classes, I could Zoom in classes. And then one of the things that occurred to me a few weeks into this, and it was before Pesach, when I was really starting to feel very sad for people who were alone, and recognizing the blessing that I have of being with my husband. And I think my sister is still on this. And every day I would speak to her and we would really just gab. And then before Pesach, I said to her, what about if we start to learn every day? So we started this wonderful thing at 4 o'clock every afternoon. We schmooze for a very long time, and we learn as well. And we've been able to do some siyums and siyumim, whatever the plural is. And that's been something that's intellectually stimulating, that's socially stimulating, that's emotionally stimulating for the two of us. So that was something new and creative that I did with her. I try to call people who I think might not get phone calls from other people. I got involved with this chesed committee at Baron Hirsch, and it's been very nice, but I might have gained much more than I've given, because I think part of happiness is to be able to reach out to others and to try to be useful. And it's there's a tremendous sense of accomplishment. That's not why I would do that, but a large benefit for me is by reaching out to other people that I definitely gain from that. FaceTime, Zooming, I know that people are tired from all that, but that's been a lifeline personally for me, whether it's with my family, with friends, with classes, with people, wherever they might be, in Israel, whatever part of the world they are in. Hobbies, I was doing a needlepoint, and I didn't do that for several months because I got so busy with other things, but I just, in fact, today got back the tallis bag that I finished for my husband, but also crocheting. And I think it's a great time to find different hobbies. I would turn off the news because I didn't want to, it's just too negative. I don't want to be around things that are negative unless I really have to be. So I'll listen to the news, but I turn off the news. I also, I try to be patient and be, I'm happy to have conversations with all different kinds of people, but at some point, if it gets too negative, then I just have to step back to help protect myself. Oh, I'm going to tell you something that was I thought very fun for me. So I was spending a lot of time outdoors, and it was almost like I wanted to get out of the air conditioning in the summer. So, how far could I go if I walked down the block or go in my backyard? And I would sit in the backyard if I was on a phone call, if I was on a class, and as long as it wasn't too noisy out there. But what was the new noise that I discovered? It was chirping of birds.
Yeah.
And I had put these begonias up hanging in by the pool over here. And I was hearing sounds and had no idea where these sounds were coming from. And then after a couple of weeks, I realized that these birds were living in these planters right in front of me. So if anybody came, and so some people are on here who would come and visit my backyard, and it was like, oh my gosh, look, the bird. They weren't even pretty birds. So it was really very interesting to me how I developed this friendship with the birds. And then one day when I overwatered the plants and the birds flew away, I felt very sad. So the point being that I discovered some new ways to identify happiness and to feel a sense of satisfaction.
Amazing, amazing, Mrs. Radinsky. Really, really, thank you.
So first of all, I just want to say, Mrs. Radinsky, how much I admire how you jumped into the deep end. I think that of all the people that I think of how they fared during this, you're one of the people that comes to mind, because you've been there. I don't want to say in every chat, but you've definitely been very visual in keeping everybody's spirits up and keeping things organized and keeping people connected. And just thank you, because I think that that's been a really important piece for all of us. And we really, even if we don't say it, we really do appreciate it. So thank you from us.
I'm touched.
So I think from my standpoint, this year is interesting because I really feel like I've been blessed a lot of ways this year. I think Yoel and I consider this year to be almost a moment out of time. And when I look back at the first 6 months of the pandemic, my family unit was together. Whether that was something that they wanted to happen, like Alexandra had to come home early from Israel and Yosef had to come home from college, but end of the day, we were all in the same house and we were all together, and Yoel was working from home. So when I say that that's a moment out of time, that's really stolen time that we wouldn't have had. And we were able to spend time with our now almost daughter-in-law. And she would come for a couple weeks at a time. And I don't know that we would be able to, in any other crazy world, have had 2 weeks at a time to spend with her and to spend with the kids and to see them completely relaxed. They really had, if they had online class, it wasn't particularly stressful. And I think that that was for us, the time that we were aware while we were in it, that was stolen time. And I definitely, to Mrs. Radinsky's point, I haven't had some of the challenges that other people have. The younger kids is a big piece that I don't have. Working in healthcare, COVID, out of work, like all those things, I don't have those challenges. So we've been able to spend the time together to enjoy each other. But that being said, there were definite challenges to having everyone home, having everyone on top of each other, especially having 2 kids home that haven't been home in a long time and haven't been used to having parents tell them what time they should go to sleep or where are you going. And I think everybody to some degree had mental health challenges that needed to be watched and nurtured and just taken care of. So what did I do personally? So one of the main things I did, and you've probably seen me, is I set myself very specific goals. I started running again, and I run 3 times a week pretty much. And I either run or walk or whatever it is, but I get to 10,000 steps a day. And I've been pretty consistent doing that for a year now, which Actually blows my mind when I think about it. And I also do a low impact workout every day. So those two things accomplish for me a few different things. So I'm a very strong believer in the value of exercise to mental health, to emotional well-being. And it allows me that time to myself that I needed with everybody home. I'm not somebody who has anybody home during the day. And this year I have had everybody home during the day. And I think that that's just the time to myself, the time to think, time to process. It's been a big portion of my inner strength for this year. So anytime, like Mrs. Radinsky said, that I had trouble finding peace or processing or whatever it was, I went outside into nature. And that's something for me that just helps. There's something centering about it. So as a family, and this is all y'all, whether you know this side of him or not, for the first 6 months, every Friday night we dressed up in a theme. And it was an alliterative theme. So it had to go like Fancy Friday Night. And Fancy Friday Night, we dressed in black tie. Fiction Friday Night, and we all dressed as a character from a fiction book. And we did Fiesta and Foreign and Florida and film. I mean, every F that you could possibly come up with, we did. But every Friday night, there we were, we took a picture, we talked about who we were, and it made the sameness of every Friday night of no company. It was more fun. It was a lot less tedious. It gave us something to look forward to and moan and groan. Don't get me wrong. It was lots of moaning and groaning, but end of the day, it was fun. And it was something that we'll remember. And we did a lot of different things. We did chalk nights. We did still life painting. We did Olympics. We did family tournaments, sushi making, woodworking. I re-stained my bathroom in like a Moroccan, whatever, you know, we just kept busy. And I think that one of the important things that I also did, again, to Mrs. Radinsky's point, is I reaching out to friends and family, but not in text. It was FaceTime, it was Zoom, it was by phone, and you make time for the people that you love, and all of a sudden you have all this time, and you're like, wow, I can have an hour and a half conversation with a friend that I haven't had a conversation with in a long time. And all those things together just built this, we'll be okay. We'll make it through this to the other side. And I think that those things kept us together. It kept us motivated. It kept us grounded. And it really built memories that when we look back, a lot of it was really good. It was good. It was very healthy. Whether it was a crazy time with us being healthy in it, that's where we had our year. And I'm grateful for that.
Wow. Dina, what creative ideas.
A lot of it's y'all. It's not me.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jessica Sukhodolsky.
So I totally agree with Dina about how it was really special to have this family time without and as much as I do love community events, you know, it wasn't like, oh, Thursday we have this, and then Sunday we have 5 different events all in one day. And after school, Eliana's doing this and Benjamin's doing that. So it was really special just to be able to slow things down for a while. I think that maybe as a family, I would say we did 2 main things to increase our happiness during this time. The first one that was really helpful, mental health wise, was making a habit of, like Mrs. Radinsky said, just being grateful for the positive things, especially when any obstacle came up. Like when we started a Zoom school, you know, being thankful that we have plenty of electronics and supplies so the kids could be successful. And when camp was canceled for the first half of the summer, being thankful for all the awesome art supplies and games we have at home that we hadn't used in a while, and kind of making our own camp. I know it's a really simple thing, but just stopping to actually take note of it and say out loud, when a new bad thing happens, my kids were really counting on going to, Camp Innovation, and, that was canceled, but just stopping and modeling for your kids the importance of actually saying out loud, thank you, Hashem, for this wonderful thing that we have, so that we're able to overcome this obstacle. The second thing was just making new rituals to make things fun. So when we realized we had to have a Seder by ourselves for the first time ever, which is like a really big deal because usually a lot of the family comes in town and we have a huge Seder, one at each grandparent's house. We found some new really fun games and traditions that we're definitely going to do this year again and really every year going forward. Like the kids were earning prizes and the Weiss family, they do like the Parsha Ninja. So they have these Seder shekels in there that they loved earning those for like the whole month leading up to Pesach. And now also like on Friday night dinner, we were used to eating with the whole family. And since it was just us, we made like a new tradition to always after dinner, we changed into our Hanukkah pajamas as a family every Friday night. Don't tell Alex I told y'all that because he thinks it's ridiculous. But I think now like he a little bit likes it. But this COVID time really gave us an opportunity to like just think differently about things and be creative and innovative. And that's something I've seen like across the board, both at home, just coming up with new fun activities to do, and also at school. It's been such a blessing for us that we're able to think of new ideas and new ways to approach education and programming and, just things that we'll hold on to going forward. Just things that, by being forced to look at things differently, you just come up with so many different positive ideas.
It's amazing. Wow. Thank you. Jessica.
Okay, so the first thing that I did that brought an immense amount of happiness to me is I joined the JCC book club that they put together. And I meet with, I think there's about 8 of us that have consistently been in this club for a year now. And we're meeting every week, and now it's every other week. But it's brought me so much happiness to be with this group of women, to talk to them. Now we text outside of the book club. They're some my age, some 15, 20 years older than me. And we have conversations all the time. We're looking forward to doing a brunch together once everyone gets their vaccines, because we haven't met in person yet.
Wow.
And it's a wonderful thing. I mean, it's very special that we have that. Plus, I love to read. So I get one focused book, and then I have my other 3 books that I'm reading at the same time. As a family, we decided to buy as many outdoor toys as we could when this started, which after we thought about it, we were standing outside in the heat of the summer, tossing rings and tossing balls and playing with frisbees. It was exhausting, but it was a lot of fun because we were doing it together all the time. We bought new board games. We would go out onto our porch and play board games. We were probably out there 3 or 4 days during the week in the evenings, all playing board games together, watching movies. We set up a screen, so we were watching movies outside, and it was just a lot more together time, which was really nice.
Oh, so summing this up, I think that, even though there were a lot of challenges, each of you found, different ways to reframe, to look at it differently, to see how you can make the most of it, and also find creative ways to do things together as a family, to connect. I think that's also very much, even though we can't get together in person, how to connect. It's interesting that all of you mentioned, more phone calls, and definitely texting isn't the same thing as calling a person or being more in touch. And that's also interesting. So our third question for this panel, because I think it already has come out that challenges really cause us to grow. So my third question, I think, is, what have you learned about yourself or about happiness from this year?
Do you want me to go?
Yeah, you go. We're going in the same order each time. That's the way it's
Okay.
working.
So I think that the first thing that I want to mention is empathy. And we're all in different situations. And as I look at this screen,
Right.
There are several people on the screen who who are in very, very, very challenging situations, especially those people who live alone, those
Right.
people who have been faced with illness in the past year or the past years, with death in the families. So I just want to mention that because obviously we all want to be very sensitive to that, and we have to be able to look outside of ourselves and outside of our own homes and realize that, you know, there is a lot going on. And as everybody faces their challenges, we certainly hope that everybody can find, each person can find that, I think it's women on here, but that each person can find her inner peace. And whoever we are, I think that some of the things that I've discovered about myself, I think are relevant, I hope relevant to everybody. And that's about how we cope. That I think I've learned that I can cope. Thank God my situation was fine. So it was just different. I had to learn different things, but I think that element of being able to cope and being able to be flexible is really, really important. And in my conversations with many, many people, one of the things that I have found is for people who are not flexible, this whole COVID situation and life in general is really, really difficult. I've tried to help some people with some device, figuring out how to work devices, and just different things that I've talked to a lot of people about. And it seems to me that those people who have that flexible nature, and for those of you who are still young on this screen, I suggest that if you're not flexible, start working on it now, because it gets harder as you get a little bit older. Another thing that I've learned is that I can control only what I can control. And I don't want to ruminate about what I can't control. And I don't really want to spend my energy and my time on what I can't control. And there were so many things that are totally out of my control and out of everybody else's control. I can't make anybody else wear a mask. I can't make anybody else do blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to spend my energy doing that. One of the things that I mentioned, I alluded to before, but it's really also been very nice for me is recognizing my own intellectual capacities and taking on some intellectual challenges that I really don't think I would have done prior to this, but I have plenty of time now, so I can sit with certain things and I can pull apart whatever a particular book is.
Dafyomi.
Excuse me?
Dafyomi.
Yeah, right. That's part of it too. But whatever it is, you know, that there are, it's an opportunity to take the time to stretch myself. And I also want to say that I would say that happiness to me is not about the big things in life. You know, the big things, okay, so that the joy of buying this something lasts for, you know, a minute, a day, a week. But I really think that happiness is very much about the small things in life. And I'm not going to enumerate them now, but I think we can all figure out what some of those smaller things in life, and it is really about happiness is about the smaller things in life, which are really the most important things in life. But it's those little things, whether it's the phone call or the smile or the note from the person says, you know, I'm thinking about you, et cetera, et cetera. And another thing that is that I think I've recognized during this time, or reminded myself during this time, is that we all have weaknesses, and being able to accept my own weaknesses and laughing at myself, using humor and making fun of myself, you know, not in a mean way, but just, you know, just laughing at my own silliness or my own vulnerabilities. And I think that if we can recognize our own vulnerabilities, it makes it possible to be really much more empathetic and less judgmental of other people as well. And on a final note, I would say that happiness equals optimism and hope and family and community and forgiveness of self and others, and really remembering that no one is perfect, and starting with myself. And Emir Hashem, I hope that the happiness from Purim keeps going and that this will be a better year for all of us.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, so what have I learned about myself and about happiness? So one of the main things that I learned is that we can't take anything for granted, even happiness. There are moments that you can look around and be like, everything is wonderful. Why am I not happy? How can I not be happy? And happiness and inner peace, I feel like, is something that needs to be built. It needs to be developed. It needs to be worked on. And it's not something that you necessarily feel when you should. And sometimes the guilt or the sadness at not feeling happy when you should is also a true challenge. And I think it's a Yiddish mantra, but I'll explain it. Tracht gut mit sein good, which means think good and it will be good. It's like, fake it till you make it. And sometimes that's the first step. Sometimes it's like, you know what, I might not be feeling it, but I can sure put on a happy face. And sometimes you forget that you're not feeling it and you actually are happy. But I did find that was something that I had trouble with, that you look around and you're like, this is the picture perfect moment. Why am I not feeling it? And I learned that also for me, sometimes it's important to just breathe through. And what I mean by that is not to necessarily trust my first instinct, my first reaction, to kind of stop, to try to understand, to try to empathize, to not react based on fear. Because I think a lot of times that what we had this particular year is that our initial reaction was like, wait, why are they doing that? Or how could they do that? Or why do you think that that's okay? And I want to say 80%, 85, 90% of the time it is okay. And your reaction was fear. And a lot of times you have to breathe through that and think through why you're reacting that way. I also learned that sometimes things that, are cliched or trite, I don't know, like journaling or meditating, practicing gratitude, affirmations, like all those things that people say, do those. When you believe in them, they work, they help. And it might not be that one thing works for you over the other, but find what works for you, because it does, it really does. If you like put the effort in to do it, it helps. One thing that I learned that I'm not good at is asking for help. I'm trying to get better at that. I'm really bad at that. I learned that sometimes it's just not okay. And it might not be okay. And you might not be okay. And that's okay. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. Something else I'm really bad at is listening. And I need to get better at that. That's something I work on, that I think was something that is challenging. I learned that giving makes you happy. I think that's something Mrs. Radinsky spoke about. They always say that giving is more important to the giver than it is to the person that's getting, and it's very true. And I learned that the power of community makes us all stronger, but it also makes us all weaker. And it's up to us to choose how we want that to work. And I think that that's something that we're all going to need to take on. I'm not saying Memphis, I'm saying everyone is going to need to take that on. And the thing that I learned the most is that God's in control, and faith is a big player in happiness, because if you can't believe that there's a purpose or a plan, what can you believe? Because that's ultimately what it comes down to, is we're not in control. And the way that you can be in control of that is to believe that someone else is in control. And that's some of the things that I came to this year, but it was definitely an impactful one.
Wow, so much wisdom. Jessica.
For me, I think it was really, like, one of the main things that I learned is really just to stop and smell the roses. Like, a lot of times, I love to plan big things and like be a perfectionist about every tiny little thing. And anytime like we're doing something, whether at home or at school, I make a big show of it. But throughout this, really, like, the best times for me, and I'm really focusing on making this what we like our normal thing and a priority, is just like hanging out. Like I had an opportunity to show my kids all of the 90s kids movies. like all of the best ones. We just had like a few weeks there where it was movie night every single night. And oh, it was the best though when Malco started selling their popcorn. That was a game changer. So we would go pick up the popcorn, bring it home, and watch like Rookie of the Year or Cool Runnings or something. And it was great. And you know, and it wasn't a big hoopla, but it was just fun and being in the moment. That was a major one. Now I think like Dina said, just not taking anything for granted and really just being present all the time has been huge. Like, you know, whenever we go over to sit with my grandparents outside, and as much as it shatters my heart having to sit away from them and not, because you know my grandfather is like a big kisser. He wants to kiss it and hug everybody. So not being able to do that, it just kills me. But just, you know, being in the moment and having a good time and just being so grateful to, you know, have the time with them has really been a big one. So yeah, I think just appreciating everything going on and, you know, and having fun with the little things. Oh, and another one is, you know, just being kind, you know, like if something pops into your head or you see something that reminds you of someone, call them or text it to them. And it'll definitely make them happy too, you know, like, you know, if it occurs to you, oh, I really should tell so-and-so, tell them. That's it.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you.
No,
Well, I've learned from this that family and friends are the number one most absolute thing that you have to have. It means everything. So with all different cousins from my side, from Dan's side, from our moms, our dads, from everywhere, we have huge Zoom calls. And it's made a big difference to see these family members that we only see at bar, bat mitzvahs or our weddings, and we're in a dry spell between ages and everything else, but because of COVID, that we're not having these simchas. So spending time with family, talking to friends that I have not spoken to in a long time, and has brought us closer. So I've learned that those are very important things to make sure you always keep in touch with your family and your friends. Another thing is that we can choose not everyone can, but I've made a decision to choose to be happy. If I'm upset about something, I find something else that will make me happy and I focus on that. So I don't let my day go downhill because of one thing. I'll be happy because I noticed that my son decided to wear something that matched today, or that somebody else decided to brush their hair, and that's a huge deal. So little things, you know, that around the house, with the family, with the kids, with the husband, to make me happy. So that's what I've learned, I think, a lot this year is family and friends are above everything else. And to choose, if you have the choice and you can make the decision, choose happy.
Amazing. Wow. Thank you so much, each one of you. I'm just thinking of like, I'm like full of all this wisdom right now. I'm thinking like myself, you know, how do you even summarize all the different ideas? And it's amazing how there's some things that repeat themselves, but each of you had, you know, your own side. And I really hope that everybody who's with us really can also find the parts where they can think. And, you know, again, we're not comparing challenges or who had a harder time or an easier time. It's more of really thinking together about how we can help each other. I think that also came up so many times, how we can support each other in our happiness and think about everyone. And, you know, definitely the concept of, you know, if I have to share that with someone else, if I have something kind to say to someone else, if I have something to give to someone else, to have empathy and listen to other people, it's really, really amazing. And I've just really enjoyed listening to every single part of, you know, the different ideas, and even took more ideas for myself. And I have to say that probably I could have also added here that I don't think I had so much time, but different things are really adding to happiness. I really wanted to end. So first of all, thank you again, Mrs. Radinsky. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Jessica, Sukhodolsky, wonderful. And thank you, Jessica Weiss, for your inputs into our panel. I wanted just to end with one more idea. I know that's already late and we're at other time, but one thing that I've taken with me a lot, and I think that one thing that Dina mentioned is how much faith is part of happiness. And when we go into the story of Purim, that's really the part of it, that the story of Purim, the Megillat Esther, is finding the hidden Hashem inside the story. Hashem is the one, it might have come from China or something else, but Hashem is the one who brought COVID to us, brought this challenge onto us. And a lot of times we're not happy, we think, because something should have been different. And the truth is that this is the way Hashem had it. And for me, there's a certain sentence from the Megillah that really brings that home to me. In the end, in general, I think I was going over the Megillah with my students, and we were talking about how all different things about, what's bothering Haman there. And Haman has quite a few, issues. You could call it evil, but we also just, very jealous, and maybe, so yeah, someone would say, he has low self-esteem, so nervous. People like him, don't like him. They did likes or didn't do likes. And one of the sentences after the first banquet, he goes out and he sees Haman, and he goes home and he sees Mordechai, who doesn't bow down to him. He's so upset, and he goes home and he tells his family, how he's the viceroy, he's a second to the king, and he has this honor, and only he was invited to the banquet. And then he says, "V'chol zeh einenu shaveh li." None of this is worth it to me. And one of the ideas that, I don't know where the source is, but Yemima brought in, it's one of the places, if we look at the end of the word, we have a hint of Hashem. Zeh einenu shaveh li. This isn't worth it to me. None of this is worth it. And that's the point where we're not happy. This is not worth it. What I have right now is just, and that's the opposite. The end of it is the words of Hashem's name. Zeh is the hey, einenu vav, shaveh hey, li yud. When we say that nothing's worth it, we're putting Hashem's name backwards. If we want to find Hashem in the world, we have to switch the sentence. We have to learn to say, li shaveh einenu zeh. It's worth it for me that it's not that. Right now, it's worth it for me that the situation isn't that. And that's like the point of faith in Hashem, in his bringing things the way they are, so that we can, that instead of, being in a point of trying to fight it, we can, yes, act on what we can act and do what we can, but find the ways to look into the situation and say, if Hashem put me in this situation, then what can I do with it? And I think everyone has done that in different ways this year, but definitely each of you in the panel really gave us so many different thoughts of how to do that and how you did that this year. And I want to thank everybody for joining us, and really, really pray. And I think that's also very important for happiness, is to pray and to turn to Hashem and really ask that from here we should have health and an end of this situation. And we should be able to take from this year the good things, the things that we want to learn from it, that we've grown so much, and be able to use them in health and in a good place of community. So thank you, everybody, and have a good evening. And we should go from Purim to a very happy and healthy Pesach.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining, everyone. Wow, Orit. You're muted.
That was really nice.
Thank you so much for joining. I'm so happy that you joined.
I
Organizing.
realized a little bit late. I didn't realize the time, but it was really nice.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mrs. Radinsky. I should have mentioned more how you're such a part of the organizing of the evening, but thank you so much for everything.
Nothing to thank.
Hi,
Thank you
Barbara.
for doing good. Have a good night, everybody.
You too. Have a good night.
And
Bye, Barbara.
I recorded it, Sara Chaya.
I was about to realize I hadn't recorded. I said someone else was recording. I'm like, yay.
Yeah.